Welcome back to Kings of the North. Doug Lesmerises in New Orleans, Bill Landis. Are you in Los Angeles or Pasadena?
LA, baby. Downtown LA.
Yeah. My kids always do this when I'm taking a picture. I always want to take a picture of them like from under or like with a bad angle. And they're always yelling at me. And I'm a little low now. And I feel like my double chin is working overtime on this show today. People have to
I'm going to also apologize in advance for I'm using my phone, but it's on my computer. And when I touch the table, it's going to shake. So you're just going to have to deal with it.
Oh, well, just think it's an earthquake.
Hopefully not.
So I am in the media workroom because I wanted vibes. Let's see if I can get, there's like Sugar Bowl. You get any Sugar Bowl vibes here, Bill?
It looks very sugary.
Fine. Yeah. And they set me up. They did a great job. John from the Sugar Bowl set me up, but there are people working here. So when I was asking about this, they were like, "Are you one of those shouting shows?" And I was like, "No, we don't shout on this show ever." So now I feel like I'm going to whisper the whole time because people are trying to do their jobs. Also, this is the sword that I brought. It's a blow-up lightsaber.
Nice.
It's the best I could do. My daughter got it for me for Christmas. So it's a portable sword. So I did not blow it up at home. I brought it. It came in a little ball, like from a gumball machine. And then I inflated it just before the show. So we do have the sword.
Did you look up federal laws on bringing swords across state lines? Or you just figured it was best not to bring it?
I laid my sword across my suitcase and it didn't fit. So that was the answer right there.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the vibes and the ball that we talked, both at Sugar Bowl Media Day and Rose Bowl Media Day. But we're also going to do a big game breakdown on Penn State, Boise State, and I do think that we're going to get constant updates from our loyal viewers here on YouTube because Iowa's playing right now, and it is quite a conflict for people to have to choose us over Kirk Ferentz and the Hawkeyes.
Yeah, so what's the situation with Iowa? Oh, they're winning 14-7.
Iowa's up 14-7. And they return a kick, so people are very excited. So we're glad you guys are here. We had to push it back because Bill, you just got done with Media Day at the Rose Bowl not too long ago.
Yeah, ended about a half hour ago, maybe a little more than that. So they're currently turning that room over now into the room for tomorrow's coaches press conference. But everything was here at the Sheraton downtown LA, Oregon and Ohio State both for about an hour a piece. It was interesting. Ohio State brought its entire team. They only had to bring the two deep if they wanted to, two deep in coaches. So that's what Oregon did. It was actually it even felt like less than that for Oregon. I wanted to say maybe there were, I don't know, 30 players or something like that for Oregon and their coaching staff, and Ohio State's entire team was here. So it was quite different vibes between the two.
I learned something about New Orleans. It's on Central Time. Which I was planning everything we were doing. I was like, wait, I got here. And I was like, wait, what time is it here? So I was a little ahead of you with Notre Dame and Georgia. And I don't know if this happens to you, but like I got caught up. And I ended up having like 2 20-minute conversations with Joe Rudolph, the Notre Dame offensive line coach, and Mike Mickens, the Notre Dame defensive backs coach, both of whom are true sons of the North. And I was just like, is there anybody else here? I don't even care about anybody else. I just want to talk to Mike Mickens and Joe Rudolph for an hour each about ball. And then I was like, oh, wait, I have stuff to do. So we do have like little interview packages that we each did from our two sites. But, and we want to do the Penn State, Boise State breakdown. We'll have the cram-o-meter. I have some very specific crammy thoughts. But what were you thought both teams were confident? Like you got from both Ohio State and Oregon? Just vibes. Yeah. Vibes talk her early here.
Yeah. It's a little unique. I guess I don't know off the top of my head how often. I mean, I guess it's happened with SEC teams, but the rematch nature of this game, I think, has given both teams confidence. It's just one thing Dan Lanning said that I thought was interesting is like that matters. The familiarity does give you confidence, but then you also have to be on alert for, okay, what's the change going to be? What's the trick? What's the tweak off what you saw the first time going to be? But that's sort of like a moment within the game, a moment or two within the game you have to be ready for. Otherwise, I do think both sides are very confident that they know what each other is about. And interestingly enough, like Ryan Day was talking about that even before we knew this game was going to happen. He was talking about Ohio State's like end of the bracket in general, which obviously featured Oregon and featured Clemson, a team that Ohio State has played a couple of times already in the postseason. And I think seeing some logos that they're used to seeing, I think gave Ohio State a little bit of confidence if it was obviously able going to get past Tennessee, which they now have done. But There's no surprises, I don't think, in terms of like what the individual dudes are about. I think there's always a bit of worry that might come with, okay, like I'm watching this guy on film, but I don't really know what that's going to be like until I get on the field with him. For the most part, both these teams know what that second piece is going to be like. That there are a couple of guys like Jordan Birch, probably most notably, who didn't play in that first game between Ohio State and Oregon. But aside from that, it's like, Josh Connerly is going to line up across from Jack Sawyer, and guys are going to know what each other's about.
Yeah. Did like the NFL stuff come up? This is the kind of thing that this is what it's like in the NFL, right? When you're playing teams twice and 3 times a year. I don't know if it's Kirby Smart was talking about some NFL stuff here too. Like, I mean, everything's becoming more like the NFL. So,
yeah, I mean, not so much that I heard. I think Ryan Day has talked about that in the past. I'm sure he mentioned it today. I didn't stick around for Ryan Day's entire. He talked the entire time. He was at a podium for an hour, but I just like popped over a time or two, so I didn't quite hear that. I don't know if it applies to the Oregon side of this. I do think the NFL is like so homogenized that it's really hard to surprise anybody in that league. So like the fact that you play teams multiple times, I don't know that it makes that much of a difference. In college, when teams are so different schematically week to week, and I think there's a little more leniency or appetite maybe for being a little more aggressive and trickery with your stuff, that I don't even know if you can really compare the two.
Yeah. To me, and I feel like having covered a lot of Ohio State, you've occasionally encountered this over time, where when you get to a game where it's a Northern school against the SEC, there's almost like an assumption of like, well, you're not as talented, right? Yeah. So let's start there and then have a discussion. And I don't think that was the vibe for this.
Interesting.
I don't. And maybe that's just because, and I did, John's asking, did I bring my dog mentality hat? I did, but I didn't bring it down here. I kind of chickened out a little bit. And we'll talk about some other things. Like, I mean, it's like, I don't know. Am I really going to like walk up to Malachi Starks, like with the sideways dog mentality hat and be like, do you have dog mentality, dude? Like I thought about it, but then like, I was like, he's a person. I'm a person. Like, it's like Jalen Walker. You're an incredible football player. Dog mentality. Be like, kind of a poser. So no sword except for this. I was going to take that. If I just walked up and like booped Kirby Smart on the head like that, that'd be something. But Kirby Smart said that like Notre Dame's like an SEC team, which like when somebody from the SEC is talking, that's the highest form of flattery that you can give somebody. Yeah. But can I read you a quote from Marcus Freeman? And I didn't stay at Marcus Freeman the whole time. I did stay at Kirby Smart for a while, but I thought this was like exactly the kind of thing that maybe is like why Notre Dame is different now and why I think maybe the North is different. But I think Notre Dame is such a good encapsulation because Notre Dame previously was like good enough to get here, but that was it, and there wasn't really a next level to it. But Marcus Freeman was asked, I think it was the last question of his news conference, what's the one thing you want to see from your team on Wednesday? Do you know what his answer was, Landis? It was a specific. Well, it's a word. It starts with a V.
Victory.
Oh, that's good. There's a lot of good V words. You could say violence, like violence in football sense, right? He said velocity. Isn't that a good answer? What do you want to see from your team? Velocity. You know what I mean? It's playing with velocity for 60 plus minutes. And in order to do that, you have to have clarity in terms of what you've been asked to do. So I feel like there have been times in the past when if a coach from the North got asked that, they would answer something like, do your job or follow, complete your assignment or but velocity. And I thought it was an encapsulation of what I think I kind of got the vibe of here today. Is it like there's not really anything different between these teams, which not that there's nothing different. Georgia has higher recruiting rankings. We know that, but I don't think, and I think it has happened in the past. My expectation is not that we're going to get to this game as the last game on New Year's Day and look and say, Notre Dame can't hang. And that in itself is like a step, isn't it?
It is a step, yeah, because he wouldn't. I don't think he would have answered velocity right if he had felt watching from tape that Georgia had a decided like height, weight, speed advantage, which we've seen before when the SEC plays teams from outside of the conference. I do wonder. It's funny you're talking about that because Ryan Day was asked about, like along the lines of familiarity. He was talking about playing Tennessee, and he said like you never know like when you're playing an SEC team until you get on the field exactly how you're going to match up. And then they obviously matched up very well. I wonder if any part of the way that Ohio State just pantsed Tennessee like might have emboldened Notre Dame a little bit. It's like, well, because they know Ohio State. They've been on the field with Ohio State the last 2 years. So and I'm sure they watched the Georgia-Tennessee film, and I know Georgia won that game. But then like Tennessee was a pretty competitive team in the SEC all year. Some people thought it might have been the best team in the SEC. And then Ohio State just utterly destroyed them. So I do wonder if there's any connection there between Marcus Freeman like embracing the idea of Notre Dame can absolutely hang with Georgia in every facet. That maybe you don't have that confidence if you haven't already seen a team from that league go play a team from the North and lose the way that Tennessee did.
I think there's like a lot of Northern transitive property stuff potentially going on here, because I think if you look at, for instance, Ohio State 2 years ago playing right with Georgia, you look at Ohio State, Tennessee that you just talked about, and then I think you can look and say to yourself, is anybody
Michigan
better
beat Alabama last year?
That matters. Washington beat Texas. But also you can look and say, like, is there anybody in the country that's more talented than Oregon and Ohio State? And then you have transitive property stuff here with Notre Dame in Marcus Freeman's tenure has hung with Ohio State, right? And I think they could say, this is where we weren't good enough, but they at least have a measuring, like a measuring stick right in front of them. And I think you can look at what Penn State did against Oregon in the Big Ten championship game. You absolutely can look at what Boise State did against Oregon in week 2. And there's a lot of things that I don't think there's this veneer of, the we can't hang, right? I thought, didn't you think like we can't, there's one thing for there to be like SEC superiority from the SEC. We're better than you. But I think it permeated. I thought there was like kind of a we can't hang idea that probably in the media we would have fought back against. But I feel like sometimes we felt it in the anticipation of games and sometimes on the field. And I think that might be gone.
I think it could be. I mean, Urban Meyer showed up to Columbus with designs on erasing that notion, right?
Yes.
And then they got the opportunity to do it in 2014 when Ohio State beat Alabama. But even after that happened, that almost became like a very specific Ohio State conversation, and it wasn't really applied to anybody else. Like even like Notre Dame went to the playoff and they lost to Alabama in 2020, right, in the Cotton Bowl. You were waiting for like others to kind of join the party, I guess, with the Buckeyes to show that they can do it. And Notre Dame's going to have that chance here. It's a pretty big opportunity for that program that it has to go out and do. Like I don't know that we assume it 100%, but the vibes relative to that do feel different. Which is like what we've been talking about all year on the show, right? It's like they're good. The SEC is good. They're not unbeatable. You can go take your swing at them and be just as competitive, if not better, in some regard than those teams typically are. So that does feel different now. Like they got to go on the field this week and back that up. But going into it, I do sense a decent amount of confidence that the North can hang with the South. That the SEC is not some unvanquishable foe like they used to be.
Yeah, people are saying that I'm using my library voice. You'll know when everybody's gone because I'm going to let it rip. When this place is empty, I'm going to take my pants off. Like it's going to be like it's on. Any rust versus rest conversation on your end? Because I caught at least a little bit of it here.
No, I didn't ask about it. I don't know how interesting I find it. So I don't know that it was asked a whole lot. I think Ohio State, in retrospect, now that it has played, is thankful to have some momentum. Ryan, I think we maybe talked about this when Ohio State was getting ready to play Tennessee, that Ryan Day talked about Ohio State in terms of like a pro wild card team, that sometimes you see a wild card team win a game and then get on a roll that's unexpected. So they're embracing that idea. But I think Oregon's very happy to have the time off, like happy to have time for like Tej Johnson and Jordan Birch and Marcus Harper to all get close to 100% themselves. So we'll see what wins out. I didn't catch wind of a whole lot of discussion, but I think I talked to Marcus Harper, like he seemed to be in pretty good spirits, and I think enjoying the opportunity to get a little healthier.
I just caught Jeremiah Love a little bit, the Notre Dame running back, on that idea. I feel like it could be an advantage that Notre Dame has played more recently than Georgia. I feel like it will be an advantage, especially if you're a team that hasn't played a game in 3 weeks. It might be a little bit rusty going into your first game. So course, whatever. But for Georgia, also losing Carson Beck, I'm sure they've been using every minute they can to get Gunnar Stockton ready for this. So that's probably Georgia would take the extra time for something like that.
What were the Gunnar Stockton vibes?
See if there's Georgia people around before I answer this. Hold on a second. Let me go look real quick. Just make sure there's no dogs.
Okay.
There's a few dogs here still. Okay, I'm going to get my plastic sword out to answer this.
Okay.
My official answer on Gunnar Stockton is I think Georgia is trying to talk itself into Gunnar Stockton. And it's one of those things like I've started this. I have, you saw me do this at the end of my time on the Ohio State beat. I reached the point where if you said something good about a player, I was like, that guy stinks. And if you criticized a player, I was like, you love that guy. Because I think everything that every coach said was intended to like prevent the big heads of great players and lift up guys who weren't quite getting it done. And if I came here with the idea of like Carson Beck's been erratic enough and turned the ball over enough that I think it could be an edge for Georgia, actually, just like to have Gunnar Stockton come in and like hold down the fort, and maybe they simplify the offense. And let me give you an answer. This is actually, I was going to save it for later, but I'll give it to you right now. This was Riley Leonard talking about making his first career start at Duke. Okay, this was when he was a young guy. So Gunnar Stockton's a third-year guy; he's not as young. So Riley Leonard said, "My first start. He's a more talented player than I was my freshman year. But I went to Virginia Tech for my first start. It was about 17 degrees, 30-mile-per-hour winds. I had no clue what I was doing. I actually remember running out of the tunnel for that game, and I left my mouthpiece in the locker room. So everybody else is running that way. I get about 15, 20 steps in, turn back around, which is a terrible idea. Somebody could have grabbed it for me, but I'm running the opposite direction looking for my mouthpiece. That whole experience was just awful during the moment, but hilarious to think about now. And it is a reminder. It's just a reminder, Bill, that when you've never done something before, it's hard to do it for the first time. And it's hard to do it for the first time when it's on the biggest stage in college football against a great team. And I just like, I don't want to, we can Cardale or Jones ourselves into oblivion on this conversation, but like, that's the one. Like how many other times has a guy who hasn't played very much come in and like, it's been a little bit of struggle early on. And I'm not pretending to be an expert on this, but he's just like he's a very like kind of quiet guy, man of few words. Some of his teammates are talking about the idea that Carson Beck is a city guy and Gunnar Stockton's a country guy. You know, like they love him, but like everybody was just saying like, we love this guy. The main thing that people were talking about is like that everybody likes him. Kirby Smart called him lovable. And it's just one of those of like, nobody said he's going to cut your throat to make a third one. You know what I mean? Like, it's like Kirby Smart was saying how the guys are going to play for him because they like him so much. And that's all great. I just, my media day impression is like, this is a lot to ask. This is a big spot.
So there was no like Stetson Bennett magic vibes with Gunnar Stockton.
I have to look around and see if I can do it here. Can I do it? Can I, in a room full of Georgia writers, can I do a Foghorn Leghorn Stetson Bennett thing? That might be, I might be fighting people off. But like Stetson Bennett's not lovable. Stetson Bennett's like a pompous jerkhole.
Yeah.
Who would be like, you need me to lead you down the field on a 3-minute drill at the end of the national semifinal to win a game? I got this. Right. So like that, what do you want? Do you want the nicest guy in the world, or do you want a cocky killer? And so it's not that nice guys can't win, but it feels like Georgia is going to trot out the nicest guy in the world. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. I prefer the cocky killer, I think.
Yeah. It's because that's what you are. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's do a little like a little more hardcore ball conversation from your end of things. What were some of the football things you felt like you learned from this?
I think one of the things I wanted to learn a little more about was Oregon's offensive line and like how it's gotten to this point.
Okay.
To the point where like in the beginning of the year, we're like, what is going on with this offensive line? To now we're at the end of the year, like, is this the best offensive line in the country? And I think it's up for some debate. Like Texas is very good. I know Army won the Joe Moore Award. I think Texas and Oregon were the other finalists for that. There are other good offensive lines. Ohio State has worked through a lot to get to a decent place with its offensive line as well. But I talked with Josh Connerly about it, and I talked with Marcus Harper about it as well. And like the common theme between the two was like Pancho Lalaulu, the center, and who played center last year in the Fiesta Bowl for Oregon, but didn't open the season as the starting center. I think it was it Charlie Pickard was the center, was a walk-on, and Pancho was playing guard. And it didn't really feel like for them that things were settled until they moved Pancho Lalaulu back to center. And like Marcus Harper switched sides. They put Nashad Strother in there at the other guard position. And it was like once they got that figured out, it was like, okay, we're ready to roll. And it actually it's not quite the same thing, but I remember in 2014 with Ohio State's offensive line, in the beginning of the year, they were like flip-flopping guard. There were like 3 guys who were playing guard. And then they were like switching sides to like finally settled on like Pat Elflein and Billy Price were going to play guards with who was the center?
Jacoby
Bourne. Thank you. And it was like, okay, they figured that out. And then they kind of took off from that point, had some struggles against Virginia Tech, couldn't block them famously and lost that game. Oregon hasn't lost, but they were really struggling on their offensive line at the beginning of the season. And it was just sort of like moving a piece around, like getting the right guy in the right spot. Just like opened up a whole new reality for Oregon's offensive line. To the point where I would probably say they're the best this year. If you look, like their rushing production is very good. They don't give up sacks. Part of that's the offense. Part of that's Dylan Gabriel being very, very difficult to sack. They don't give up a ton of pressure either. It's just a very good unit. And it was just kind of a first time for us to talk to them about how they became that. So that was one thing I was very interested in. And then the other thing is, I think Ohio State's secondary is like drastic is probably too strong of a word, but it is different, I think, schematically. And we talk more about it when we do the full game breakdown tomorrow. But they've moved some things around where they're able to do more with like 3 high safeties than they were doing when Oregon and Ohio State played the first time. And I think the key to unlocking that has been Jordan Hancock, who was Ohio State's nickel, and they're playing him more as like a deep safety kind of since the midway point of the season, which has then allowed them to put Caleb Downs in different spots. And Caleb Downs played a very good game against Oregon the first time around, but I think he'll be in a position to make even more plays in this one. So it's like for as much familiarity as there is between these two teams, I do think, especially Ohio State is different on defense because of what happened in that first Oregon game. So it's like the idea of like Oregon kind of forced them to change a little bit. And now we get to see the fruits, I guess, or lack thereof, of that change the second time around with Ohio State playing Oregon again.
Okay. All right. I wanted to talk a lot about the offensive line too for Notre Dame, because I've just been so impressed. And this is what I was talking with Joe Rudolph, their offensive line coach, about, and Anthony Knapp, their true freshman left tackle. Like, I believe in this group, and I think the way they've handled everything this year, like Emil Wagner has held down right tackle the whole year. But even Joe Rudolph was saying, like, he wasn't a starter in the spring. Like in spring football, that's not what they thought the plan was going to be. And then he won that job at the end of spring and then came in August and locked it down the whole time. And like they've shuffled almost everywhere else on the offensive line. But one of the things they did is they had 2 guys who were starting at the end of last year who then didn't win jobs in the preseason, but they kept them locked in. And Joe Rudolph, I thought it was interesting, was talking about the idea of sometimes when you're in a battle, you're so worried that like every time I make a mistake, I'm going to lose my job, that you don't play your best. And he thought the 2 veteran guys, Rocco Spindler and Pat Coogan, who wound up not winning jobs in the preseason, then sort of like once that was over and they were backups, and then they were called upon because Ashton Craig against Purdue was lost for the season. And then Billy Schrouth was out for a while, and both those guys had to go in. And then I think they played better. He thinks they played better, like having not won the job, because it chilled them out a little bit. And so while we've been talking about all these offensive line injuries for Notre Dame, they've filled in with starter quality guys who actually were then in a better frame of mind, almost like having lost the job, and sort of like, but they hung in, they didn't give up. And now here they are. And then the other guy is Anthony Knapp, that is a true freshman at left tackle.
Yeah.
And he said, Joe Rudolph was saying a lot of times with a young guy, you're trying to just worried about your job. And it's like a defense like Georgia, it might just be Jalen Walker or Damon Wilson or somebody going one-on-one with you and trying to beat you, but there's also like a million things going on. They could be guys coming out of the ceiling. And he thought Anthony Knapp was very advanced as a young guy, that he wasn't just like this, right? And that allowed him to play very early. So, and then he's been like that the whole way. So I just feel like the story of this offensive line, that in the end, and then it was when Billy Schrouth got hurt, Rocco Spindler took over then. And then when Schrouth came back, they were like, they're both playing so good. They put Schrouth at left guard. And then Sam Pendleton, who had won the job in the preseason, was benched. But then he had to play last week in their last game because somebody else got hurt and he was ready. So it's like it's a great story. And I feel like they've been through so much already. I know how good this Georgia defense is schematically and from a talent perspective, but like, I think they can handle it because they've handled all of this so far. So I just it's kind of what I thought from afar, but I was really talked to Joe Rudolph like 20 minutes about this stuff. And it just feels like they're in a great spot. And if that's going to be a huge part of this, if you can't block Georgia, you're dead. I kind of believe in them that they can block Georgia.
Well, why wouldn't you? Well, for one, because the Notre Dame offensive line is very good, but also like this is not, in my opinion, typical Georgia defensive line, right?
Yes.
The things that were it wasn't the only thing that was great about Georgia when it was winning its national championships. Like 2021, the defensive line was ridiculous. In 2022, it was still pretty good. This is not that. Like, there are guys. You have to respect Michael Williams. They respect Jalen Walker, no doubt about that. But I don't think it's nearly the same challenge that those teams back then were trying to deal with when trying to beat Georgia. So then you combine that with a Notre Dame offensive line that has played very well. I would say, like I mentioned, Oregon and Texas. Like, I put Notre Dame right up there with the best offensive lines in the country, especially given what they've had to overcome injury wise. So I think maybe they're a little bit below those two teams, but they're quite good, and they understand who they are too. Like I think I guess it's a credit to Joe Rudolph, and Mike Denbrock, the offensive coordinator. Like they have developed an identity with that offensive line, and they just lean into it. They don't try to make them do the things they're not good at. So I would be confident in that too.
Anthony Knapp, we'll talk to him in a little bit, but Georgia kid who was not really recruited by Georgia. They kind of were looking at another guy at his school, and he kind of said like, that was kind of my dream school, but he also has a lot of Northern roots. So it's one of those Kirby Smart was saying, like, you can't recruit a state like Georgia. You can't recruit everybody, but here's a kid as a true freshman who's ready to play left tackle. One of the other things, Riley Leonard's going to have to scramble, I think. And this is what all coaches say, and it's always right, is that Riley Leonard in the design run game is dangerous, but Kirby Smart said it's when he scrambles that is really going to be a problem. He's 7th in the Power 4 in scrambles, 42 this season, and he has done a pretty good. He's had 5 against Indiana. Like, I think he does a good job of it against the better defenses when he knows he needs it. I think they might need it a decent amount here. And then Kirby Smart was saying you got to tackle him like a running back, and because he is that kind of guy. And I think this is an opportunity for that version of Riley Leonard. I don't know that he's going to try to or be able to or be needed to like drop back and pick apart the Georgia defense, but I think he's going to have to scramble in those situations because listen, Georgia's going to get after you. They're going to run you down. So if it's just called run stuff, I don't know how well that'll work, but I think this is 6 to 8 scrambles, which would be a lot, but he had 5 against Indiana, and I think it's needed against this. And I think Kirby knows it.
Yeah, I think we can talk more about it when we do the breakdown of this game tomorrow. I actually think called stuff might work too, because there's a particular game that Georgia played where that seemed to be very effective against them. But Riley Leonard is like one of the hardest guys in college football to sack. He's so slippery. Like the pressure to sack rate for him is quite good relative to the rest of the country. So no, that'll be a huge part of it. And it's so deflating too to a defense where like you think you have a guy and all of a sudden he squirts out and he's on the perimeter making a throw where he's scrambling for 3-4 yards. It's not dissimilar from Dylan Gabriel. I think that's a frustrating part of playing him too. It's a different equation once he gets out for Dylan Gabriel than it is for Riley Leonard. But yeah, no doubt that's going to be a huge part of this game.
Yeah. And then my other thing was Gunner, but like we kind of talked to that. And again, like I can read you the whole lovable quote, but I don't think I need to. But it's just and then again, we'll see. We'll hear from Leonard more. I was talking to Mike Mickens, the DB's coach, about that a lot. About just the way they've been able to hang in, raise their level. Xavier Watts is a baller on the back end, and I do think we talked about. Mike Mickens and I talked about what I talked about on the show, which was Christian Gray kind of got picked on in the USC game and then had like a 109-yard pick six at the end of the game because he hung in. And they've just been Mitchell Evans was talking about this. He's like, Mitchell Evans was kind of running through the guys they've lost. He's like, imagine if we had those guys. So like they're not making it. They've been through the ringer on this stuff. And now they lost Riley Mills. But they've been through the ringer, and here they are. And I just think you'll get the best version of them because I don't think they're daunted, right? They have the worst loss in college football, and they've, I think, lost as many key guys as any good team in college football, and here they are. But I do think there's a real depth of talent there that maybe didn't exist before, which allows a head coach to sit up there and say velocity when you say, what do you want to see? So, I'm not making too big a deal of this, right? I mean, like, not the velocity thing, but like, I do think Notre Dame, as we've analyzed them over the course of the year, I think, right, as we've flattened out the sport a little bit with everything, it's like, and Kirby Smart saying, like, once upon a time you retained 98% of your players. Now, if you can retain 70% of them, that's pretty good, right? So you're the teams at the I think tier 1 and tier 2 have probably smushed into one tier because the tier 1 teams are really losing guys, and then tier 2 you lose some, but actually you're able to gain some. And you look at some of the guys they've added, some late adds in the guys in their 5th and 6th year who are coming to Notre Dame for 1 year, like Riley Leonard. I think this is a perfect example. It's brought Notre Dame and Georgia closer together when in past years they might have been 2 of the best 10 teams in the country, but there might have been a
huge gap,
chasm there. And I think now they're 2 of the best 10 teams in the country. They're 2 of the best 6 teams in the country. And I think it's much closer because it's hurt Georgia and helped Notre Dame in the exact right ways.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I think that goes back to why Marcus Freeman used the word velocity, because he doesn't. It would have been very easy even 3 years ago to stack up any team aside from Ohio State against the SEC and just think like, nope, they don't have it. It's just not like it's not. They're going to take their swing with it. They don't have the pieces. I just think it's a very different reality now for the entire sport.
I talked to Sean McDonough.
I heard you talked to Sean McDonough.
Yeah. I guess we'll play that today because I talked to Sean McDonough and I said, like, what's the deal? And he said crap in part of the answer. So, like, that's always exciting when you can get a guy to say crap. But he was very swell fella. And, again, I sit in my room and I wave my sword around. And then it's like, am I really going to stab somebody with a sword in person?
Probably not.
Probably.
Is Feinbaum there?
I didn't see him. Doesn't mean he's not here. Might just be avoiding me. But
Pete Thamel kind of from ESPN is here, and he asked me if you and Feinbaum were going to be in the same room, and I said, I don't know. My bald cap is here, so I'll have that with me. I'll have that in my back pocket just in case, anytime I see him. So, okay. So we'll promise Sean McDonough here in a little bit, but we're also going to promise a couple video packages of you and I making the rounds at Media Day. We'll actually do one from the Sugar Bowl. When we come out of this break, we'll have my little tour of talking mostly the Notre Dame guys, and we'll do that next on Kings of the North. Kings of the North at Media Days for the Sugar Bowl. Let's go do some mediating.
I'm a very emotional coach, and like I talked about at that moment, it's a tough time in a game when somebody's driving on you nonstop. We can't get them off the field. We got the wrong personnel grouping on, and I'm trying to get to my coordinator. That had nothing to do with the year that we had. I think the year we had to do with the schedule we had, which is a grind.
Did you learn anything though for how you just behave on the sidelines?
Yeah, I think emotionally you want to try to be under control, make good decisions. I think I always try to do that. There's times where sometimes your emotion can help the team in terms of energy if we're lacking that. And then there's a time when coolness takes over and it helps your team. So the more frantic our team is, the more cool I want to be. The less we're playing good like UMass, I think I got to show more emotion because it's like, what are we doing here? Like, let's get going.
Joined now by Leonard Moore. Man, you're just a kid, man. How old are you?
I'm 19.
19.
I just turned 19.
This it? You just turned 19?
Yeah, in October 28th.
Happy birthday, man. How did you get yourself ready to have a role like this for a playoff team when you're so young?
I feel like my upbringing, and I've always been a mature individual. Definitely high school helped with that for sure. I've always had a decent role on my team. So I feel like stepping into this role was good, especially with the older dudes being my mentors and stuff like that.
Ben Morrison helping you out?
Of course, yeah. He's helped me out a lot.
Okay. Did you have an idea in your head that you might be playing this much as a freshman at Notre Dame? Or this is crazy how this worked out.
It definitely is crazy. You don't never expect anybody to get injured, especially coming in, being behind somebody who's an NFL prospect. So definitely unexpected.
Okay. Coming to Notre Dame from Texas, why? Why'd you decide to go to Notre Dame?
I feel like I went to Notre Dame just because of all that it had to offer for me, like as a player and as a student, for sure. Just the education, and then definitely the coaching staff too. The ability to play for somebody like Coach Freeman and Coach Mickens especially was a good opportunity.
So we got to get great Southern players to come north for us to have a chance up here in the north. Were there a lot of SEC schools, a lot of Texas schools trying to keep you down there?
There was definitely a lot of Texas schools. I wouldn't say any SEC schools, but for sure Texas schools tried to get me down there. I just wanted something different. That was just me though. So.
Okay. So listen, we know the SEC's been great, right? But I think right now, Notre Dame, Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, anybody like that can compete with anybody in the SEC. You agree?
I agree. I never liked the SEC supremacy thing. Like even being from Texas, I never liked that. I feel like there's talent everywhere. SEC just get highly, I don't know. I feel like they just get overrated a little bit sometimes.
Yeah. They're good, but it's not like they're the only place that's good.
For sure, yeah. There's definitely a lot of talent in the SEC. I think that's why they get highly rated at the beginning of the season, stuff like that. But I think anybody can compete with anybody in college football.
New Georgia quarterback Gunnar Stockton, kind of a man of few words, but it seems like at least everybody likes him.
Yeah, I don't know. Heck, I think just treating people the right way and just being a good teammate is a good thing.
When you are as experienced as you are in a defense like this, how much freedom do you have at times to sort of let your knowledge and instincts take over versus making sure you're doing what you're supposed to do in the defense?
Yeah, that's why I like Coach Mickens and Coach Golden, our staff, so much. They're not out there, hounding us. Obviously they're hounding us, but they're not, making us play like robots. They allow us to just go out there and make plays. Kind of that's why I'm able to play so freely. I always get my job done and, make sure I'm in the right place and do what I'm told to do. But at the end of the day, they make sure, you have the freedom to go do what you need to do. You see something, make sure you're right and trust what you're seeing. So they give us the freedom there for sure.
Do you feel like you have the experience now and the talent and the ability to do something like that in this game?
100%. We've been developing as a team overall, and I've developed myself. Building up to be a better player. Obviously, still work to do throughout the course of my career, but yeah, I'm feeling good. Feel good.
Why was Notre Dame the right place for you coming up from Florida?
Yeah, I actually had no idea about Notre Dame being from the South, but I came up for the lacrosse visit. Saw the school, saw the guys here, saw the atmosphere as a whole, and just to me, it was like, oh yeah, this is home, and it was like no other.
Okay. Because listen, we got to get in the north. We got to get great Southern players to come north. So, were you thinking I'm probably going to stay south, play in Florida, or play in the SEC or something?
I didn't have much in mind at all. Maybe thinking about staying down south, but then I was like, I got to get away from home, kind of experience different stuff. And I was like, why not go up to the north for a little bit?
How old are you, man?
I'm 19.
You got a baby face. You got a baby face.
People say that. I don't know if I blame my dad or blame my mom, but I've been hearing that my whole life.
So how did you get yourself ready for this opportunity? And when Jagusaw went down, what was your initial thought in your head of holy moly, this might be my time?
Obviously a lot of excitement. It's a dream. Who doesn't want to play? Get their name on that field, whatever. But kind of once you stop thinking about all the the first thoughts, you kind of realize how serious the situation is. and kind of how like, hey, they need me, they put me in the spot, and I got to be ready for them the same way that they'll be ready for me. And kind of, you know, taking preparation and realizing how important that is, kind of finding my routine early was something very important. I think all these stuff and, you know, having people like resources, obviously having that offensive line room has helped me a lot. They kind of teach me the ways, kind of tell me, you know, how to approach certain situation, kind of one day at a time. You know, don't think about the future until it comes. Kind of keep yourself in the present, you know, and, you know, kind of instilling all that mindset in myself. It's definitely helped me prepared. Definitely got me ready. Yes, sir.
You're from Georgia?
Yes, sir. Roswell, Georgia.
Why are you at Notre Dame?
Coach Rudolph's a great coach. Coach Freeman's a great coach. Obviously, I know the culture for offensive line. I thought they could develop me the best. I wanted to be somewhere where there's great competition that can make me a lot better. And I kind of like the cold weather. So.
Oh, yes, that's an alert. We got a cold weather alert. If we're going to have great football in the North, we have to get great Southern players to come play in the North. So, like, you are getting us very excited about this because we celebrate Northern football. Why do you like the cold weather?
There's a lot of stories. So my he's from Greenville, Pennsylvania, very small town in western PA. My mom's from the Netherlands. She moved here when she was around 30 years old. I grew up going to Swickley, PA. I just love the North. I always loved cold. We didn't have snow in Georgia. We had maybe 2 years worth of snow, and I always loved snow. So, you know, I don't know. I always say I'd rather play in cold weather than hot weather because you can always put more stuff on.
And this will wrap it up from the Sugar Bowl Media Day. Doug Lesmerises for Kings of the North.
Netherlands. How about Netherlands?
Yeah. Who knew?
Netherlands roots. That's North. That's North.
Yeah.
That's way up there. So that was Anthony Knapp. I talked like tits. Two true freshmen, Leonard Moore and Anthony Knapp, doing their thing. It's crazy. So Gunnar Stockton seems like a swell fella. I mean, but that was just like a little snippet of like swell. Where are you, by the way?
I'm in the media lounge, and I think they're about to turn a TV on very loud that I'm getting nervous about.
Oh, okay. Do you want to just stand up and be 6'6" and tell them what's what?
I might have to move.
Okay. What's it going to be? Is it going to be? They put on Iowa, Missouri. We'll get arrested if we show Iowa, Missouri in the background of this show.
Yeah, I'm going to have to move because the Rose Bowl doesn't know how to do anything. So, I'm going to have to bounce, and I'll be back in a minute.
Do you want to bounce right now?
I have to. Yeah.
Okay. Bill's going to bounce. Mike, let's play Bill's Rose Bowl package right now. We'll move it up in the show and give people a little feel for what Bill Landis had for the folks walk around Media Day with Ohio State and Oregon here on this Monday as we bring it to you live from New Orleans and LA.
Bill Landis, Kings of the North here at Rose Bowl Media Day, Ohio State and Oregon. Let's go see what folks are fired up about. Here with Terrence Ferguson, Oregon tight end. I was watching the Big Ten Championship, and they're talking about how close you and Dylan have become, that you're going to be in each other's weddings. And did you know each other prior to Dylan coming here, or did you just become that close that quickly?
No, honestly, we've joked about it. We say we're going to have a joint wedding, but no, Dylan will definitely be a part of my wedding, and I think the same for his. But I didn't know him beforehand, and I think it just speaks to Dylan and just the time that me and him have put in together. There's been countless hours that we've spent either just hanging out with our fiancés at the house, we're neighbors, so just walking over there whenever, or that's me going to Hawaii with him and throwing the ball around and making sure I was around him, and seeing how his family operates and how he operates at home. We've grown so close in this little bit of time. I feel like I've known him my whole life, though, honestly. And I've told his mom that I feel like I've known him my whole life. And he's just a special person. He's easy to get along with, and he's someone that I call family, honestly. And
important wedding question, two-parter.
Okay.
DJ or live band?
We're going DJ.
Okay.
DJ.
Buffet style or sit-down dinner?
We kind of got a mixture, I'll give you a little sneak peek. It's like different type of cuisines around, so it's kind of buffet style, but also you go sit down. It's a little mixture.
Okay. All right. Sounds like a good time. I'll look for my invite in the mail. Appreciate it. Terrence Ferguson is the Oregon tight end. Thanks, Terrence. Appreciate it. Here with Kobe Savage, Oregon safety. Kobe, you guys became a very good secondary very quickly with a lot of new faces on the back end of your defense. How were you guys able to get that connection and camaraderie so fast?
I feel like the biggest part, like you said, with a lot of guys being in the transfer portal, like BJ, me, even Sheen being a transfer guy, was just being able to mend at Coach Ham's house, like doing different hangout events, staying after practice, getting in some DB drills and different stuff like that. I feel like overall helped us with our camaraderie and connection throughout this past season and throughout the summer.
You guys have obviously seen this Ohio State passing attack once before already. What stands out about them as you get ready to face them a second time?
Yeah, they're an elite group of guys with a great quarterback back there. Just playing with great technique, I feel like will eliminate some of their key plays. But yeah, that's the main thing. Just playing with great technique, trusting our eyes, and trusting the guy next to us.
I'm going to ask you the, 200th question you've been asked about Will Howard, I'm sure, since you've been here in LA. How good of friends are you guys? How often do you talk? And I don't know, like, how much does it matter that you're looking across the line of scrimmage and seeing a guy that you know pretty well, or is it just like a cool thing that doesn't really matter much to the game?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of my closest friends that I had at Kansas State. Just a great leader, a great teammate to have and be around. A really cool, fun guy to be around. And we talked a lot through this past season, but I wouldn't say we talked too much this season, especially before the Ohio State game. We got to chop it up a little bit after. But ever since then, not too much. Really just locked in on his season, locked in on my season. But it is cool to see him out there and compete against him.
Here with Marcus Harper, Oregon offensive lineman. Marcus, you guys, I was talking to Josh Connerly about this. Beginning of the year, you're moving some guys around, just trying to figure things out on the O-line. I would say since probably the third or fourth game of the year, you guys have been maybe the best offensive line in the country. What did it take for you all to get to that point?
Yeah, it just took us to kind of get some of those wrinkles out early on. And then from there, we had to mess around and just figure out what line will work for us best. Once we did that, we were able to kind of execute perfectly and kind of never look back.
How did putting Poncho at center really help settle things for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, that was a position that he came in last year and kind of solidified in the Fiesta Bowl. And I think we were just trying to find that other missing piece at guard. And so we had Nashad Strother, sitting in the cut, kind of in our back pocket piece. And I had no problem being a swing guard, whether it was left or right. And I was able to go over to right because right is primarily where I started off at in my football career. So I had no problem, again, making that transition over. And, yeah, we found that lineup, and obviously it amounted to the success we're at right now.
Your offensive line's getting together,
yeah.
Whoever's house, whatever.
Yeah.
What's the meal? Who's cooking for the group?
I don't think no one's cooking. I think the better question is who's catering. You know what I'm saying? So it might be a burger spot. It might be a Hawaiian spot. Actually, Charlie, I had a question real quick. All right, offensive line room. We're having a party.
Yeah.
At whoever's house.
Mm-hmm.
If we are having food, what's the go-to spot that's catering off? Because I said no one's cooking.
No one's cooking.
Who's catering?
Who's catering?
Yeah.
In Eugene?
In Eugene. Only thing I can say off the top of my head right now would be Gotcha Burger.
Oh.
You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha
Burger.
Gotcha Burger would definitely be it.
Yeah, so I would say Gotcha Burger in Eugene would be the cater spot.
Tell me more about Gotcha Burger.
What can't I tell you about Gotcha Burger? So imagine this nice succulent burger, right? Imagine a Krabby Patty, but brought into real life. Okay. So you got different items on the menu. Obviously, you got a regular deuce, a singular patty. You got a deuce, 2 patties. You got deuce bacon, 2 patties with bacon, and then obviously you add some onions on there. All these. I'm sorry, I'm offensive lineman. I might start sweating. But yeah, this is another burger. They do some fried onion rings, things like that. And so you get a lot of big guys and some burgers and catering. I think you'll be good.
You guys got In-N-Out in Oregon, West Coast, or no?
It's like an hour and a half up, so like no one really goes to it. But what actually just happened is they just put in a Chick-fil-A.
Okay.
They did just put in a Chick-fil-A.
That's been a game changer.
That has been a game changer. Yeah.
Have you guys tried the pimento cheese chicken sandwich?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's the best fast food sandwich in the game.
Really?
Like there's two sides to the story. Like people either love it like that, or people either hate it. I love it. I completely agree with you.
Is it something I should try?
You should try it.
Really?
Yeah, you should definitely try it. Okay. Cool. Here with Josh Fryer, Ohio State offensive lineman. Josh, your offensive line's been through, I'd say, a lot this year.
Yeah.
A lot of injuries, really devastating injuries. But you guys have kind of persevered through that to the point where you're in the Rose Bowl, still playing for a national championship. How much? It's an obvious question. How much did that test your group? Losing Josh Simmons, losing Seth McLaughlin when you guys lost them, and having to move pieces around so much?
It's tested our group a lot. I think, as you can see, when the season go on, you lose Josh, and it's a sad thing to see because All-American type player. And then you lose Seth, same thing, Remington winner. But I think it's also shows that for Ohio State in general, it's just that next man up mentality. I think Carson, Tegra, Luke, Austin have done a fantastic job. I mean, if you want to say they had a rocky start, but it's not about that for me. It's about how they finish through with this Rose Bowl game and how they're going to play in it. Same with the quarterfinals, like against Tennessee. They played really good. It was fantastic to see what they were doing. I was super happy for them.
So this is the second time this year you guys had to fly out to the West Coast from Columbus. It's a decent flight, like 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
When you're on a flight that long, are you crushing a nap? Are you watching movies? Like how do you kill the time when you're on a flight that long?
I usually crush a nap, and then I'm watching a few movies. I watched what movie? I watched Bad Boys and Twister.
The new Twister or the old Twister?
The new Twister, which was it was a really good movie. But yeah, just usually a nap for the first hour or so, and then movies after that. So,
had you seen Bad Boys before?
I have seen Bad Boys. I just like to rewatch it. I think it's a fun movie. And I think they got 4 of them. Which it's really fun. Yeah.
I like Bad Boys too. I think that's the best one.
Yeah, for sure. Bad Boys, the original one's just kind of like to get it started, and then I think it gets better and better as it goes on.
I agree. Cool. All right, Josh Fryer, Ohio State offensive tackle. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
It's Jack Sawyer, Ohio State defensive end. Jack, you've been asked a lot about the rematch element of this. From a schematical sort of 101 mano-a-mano standpoint, how much does it matter, you think, going into this game that Oregon's offensive tackles might know a little bit more about you guys and vice versa?
Yeah, I mean, I think they got great tackles. They got good offensive line and great athletes across the board. So I think that having played them the first time, I don't really necessarily think that has an impact on this game that much because they've gotten a lot better. I think we've gotten a lot better. So we're just focused on preparing the best that we possibly can going into this matchup.
I know you guys as pass rushers talk often about your toolbox, your moveset kind of stuff.
Yeah.
When you're playing a team for the second time, do you try to find a little something different to throw at a guy, or you rely on the things you've done well all year?
Yeah, I think it's a little mixture of both. You're always trying to find a way to improve your toolbox and refine the stuff that you already do pretty well. So I think it's a mixture of both. I think that if you ask their tackles, they're probably trying to improve on stuff that they can improve on and refine their skills, but also doing a little bit extra too. So I think that that's the great thing about football is that we played them early in the year, but they've gotten a lot better now, and we've gotten a lot better now. So it's a heavyweight bout, and we know we're excited for it.
This is the second time you guys had to make a trip out to the West Coast. It's a longer flight from Columbus.
Yeah.
When you're on a plane for 4 or 5 hours, are you taking a nap? You watching film? You watching movies? What are you doing?
Yeah, I was asleep the whole time.
Whole time?
Not the whole time, almost the whole time. I got in that reclining chair and I was out the minute I sat down. So it made the flight for me a little quicker. Guy from the Midwest, didn't really get on planes that much growing up. It made it a little better for me.
You got the first class seat?
Yeah, we had the first class seats. Yeah, so we had the refiner seats. So it was nice.
How do you determine who gets those seats?
I think it's the 11 starters each way, captains and seniors.
Okay, that's good motivation for a young guy.
Great motivation. Yeah.
Here with Caleb Downs, Ohio State safety. Caleb, how different would you say the Ohio State defense is from the last time you guys played Oregon?
We're executing more at a high level, and that's really the biggest thing, just the ability to do our jobs and do what we're supposed to do each play. That is really what allows the defense to be great.
Any benefit for you playing in the Rose Bowl in back-to-back years? There's some guys on your roster that at least I know familiar with the game. I think some guys still from the 2021 team that went and played against Utah in that game. Does it matter at all to have experience playing in this game?
I feel like the ability to know the situation and know the venue that you're playing at is always a positive, but at the end of the day, a new game is a new game, so we got to play the same game.
Long flight out here. Second time you guys have had to do this. When you're on a plane for 4 or 5 hours, how are you spending your time? You taking a nap? You watching film? You watching movies? Or you reading the book? What's going on?
For me, I took a nap and then I watched a movie. Watched a couple episodes of TV. But
what are you watching?
I'm watching Squid Game right now. That's the biggest thing I'm watching right now.
The first season or the new second season?
The new second season.
Okay. For sure. What did you think of the first season?
Really good. It left with a cliffhanger, so pretty much trying to figure out what's going on right now.
Is it holding up the second? Sometimes you get a little nervous, like is the second season going to be as good as the first one?
From what I've watched, it's still good. It's still really good.
All right, we appreciate it. Thanks, man.
I think Landis could win a Pulitzer as a wedding sandwich nap interviewer. When he gets on you about how long was your nap, he's relentless. What kind of sandwich was it? Bill is still trying to find a place to sit. Oh, he's here. He's right here. so we can talk about his Pulitzer Award-winning stuff. We're going to bring you Sean McDonough in a second, and then we still have this Penn State, Boise State big game breakdown to bring you. But is Bill Landis in a proper spot at this point?
I'm in the hallway. I don't know.
Oh.
Yeah, I tried to go upstairs. The internet connection doesn't work great up there. There's music playing. You have to wait 45 minutes for the elevator to come take you to your room. So I try not to complain about these things, but this could be set up better.
Okay. You really got after it with the wedding and nap questions. Did you feel good about those interviews? I thought you did a great job.
Yeah, I felt really good about it. I'm fascinated by the fact that Dylan Gabriel and Terrence Ferguson have gotten so close so quickly that they're going to be in each other's weddings. Like, they haven't known each other that long. They've known each other 12 months, maybe, give or take, right? So that's fascinating to me, that they're formed that close of a bond, which I think speaks to like Dylan Gabriel's ability to just kind of like walk in and not take over a team, but like make everybody feel very comfortable about him being the leader of
take over a wedding party. Take over a wedding party.
Yeah. I do like they want joint weddings. I wouldn't mind seeing what that looks like, but I understand the respective wives not wanting that.
Oh yeah. You don't want to share your day. A little bit like a I love you man situation there, right? Where Paul Rudd, like, you're looking around, and then Jason Siegel, you're going to Rush concerts together, and all of a sudden you're playing for a national title. That could be what happens to Dylan Gabriel. If you could go back, could you find them again and ask them which one's Jason Siegel and which one's Paul Rudd?
I think Dylan Gabriel is a Jason Siegel of that relationship. He just seems much more confident.
Okay. All right. So do you want to do Sean McDonough now? Do you think the people want to hear from Sean McDonough from
Probably.
ESPN? Yeah.
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's give the people Sean McDonough. It's about a 9-minute interview. And then, Mike, when we come out of Sean McDonough, we can come back, Mike. After Sean McDonough, we'll come back and we'll do cram-o-meter. And then we'll do the Penn State, Boise State breakdown. We're not at the Fiesta Bowl, so we'll do that last. But I talked to Sean McDonough, who is calling the game, calling the Sugar Bowl for ESPN. We had a little chat during Media Day. We are here with Sean McDonough of ESPN and ABC. How long have you been doing college football?
Before you were alive?
Yeah. No, I'm pretty old though.
I started out, my first job was sidelines in the northern part of the country on the Ivy League football game of the week back in the fall of 1984. I just graduated from Syracuse that spring, and the Ivy League was on PBS. So it's a great gig if you're the sideline reporter because there's no commercials. So they go to the sideline reporter all the time. At the end of the quarter, when there's a timeout, one of the teams calls a timeout, let's go to Sean.
Yeah.
And in the Ivy League, there's so many great stories. These kids are so smart and they have a lot of interesting hobbies and family lives and that sort of thing. So, started out. And then, so I guess I started doing play-by-play a couple years later in that package, late 80s.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm old.
Yeah. So that not a lot of Nike and Coca-Cola ads on the Ivy League broadcasts.
There were no ads.
Yeah.
No ads, which was great for the sideline reporter.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, Sean, I think there has been certainly a perception, and I think there's some truth to it, of ESPN and the SEC and perhaps ESPN and ABC announcers at times, I don't want to say pushing the SEC, but favoring the SEC and its standing in college football this year and how good the SEC teams are compared to other teams. Do you believe that's the case?
I can't speak for everybody else. I can speak for myself. In my case, absolutely not. I even said during the Indiana Notre Dame game, I don't know why there's this perception that the SEC and the Big Ten, particularly the Big Ten, is so much better than everybody else.
Yeah.
Why it was just like, all these at-large teams should just be Big Ten and SEC teams, which was the narrative some people were promoting. So, I can tell you 1,000%, there's never been a conversation where any of us have been told, push the SEC. The reality is most years the SEC is the best conference. And we can sit here and debate that all you want, but who's been the best football program the last 4 or 5 years in college football? University of Georgia, right? 2 national championships, #1 for 14 weeks last week.
Yeah.
Who was it before them? University of Alabama.
And a coach who's now retired.
Right. So what's the argument?
The argument, I think, is what's happening right now in the sport. And even when you said...
I said, and I hope you were watching.
I was.
That SMU should be in the playoff ahead of Alabama. So if there's SEC bias in that, you're going to have to explain to me where that comes from.
No, there's not in that. I do think, but even you said why are the SEC and the Big Ten viewed as better than the other conferences, particularly the Big Ten? When I would say maybe it's particularly the SEC.
Let's continue this conversation. Yeah. How many national championships has the Big Ten won in the last 22 years?
So I think this is a valid point, but I think the sport has changed with NIL and the transfer portal, and I'm not sure.
You know why it's changed? And you know how else it's changed? Syracuse is better. Duke is better. Louisville's better. Georgia Tech is better.
Iowa State's better. Yeah.
Iowa State's better. Colorado's much better. So it's not just the Big Ten that got better. You know, Indiana clearly got better, and I think that's a trend where SMU got a lot better fast, and that's the benefit of the transfer portal if these schools have money to spend and bring in players. But you have to have it. And then the question becomes, can you sustain it? Like a team like Indiana brought in 30 new players. A lot of them won't be there next year. So they have to continue to have success to do that, where this is going to be a one-year blip. And a lot of times it's quarterback driven. I'm a Syracuse graduate. They won 10 games, made me really happy. Kyle McCord was a huge part of that. Well, if he doesn't come back, can you sustain it?
Yeah.
You know, so.
But I do think, Indiana got Fernando Mendoza at quarterback. That'll help. LSU's Ricky Collins has gone to Syracuse. I do think some of this, I think the part of it that I push back against the most is I think the sport has changed enough that I'm not sure the last 20 years matters much in the current conversation, because Saban retired and that this is a new world. And last year it was Michigan and Washington, the national title game. And you look at right now, I would say there are more national title contenders from the Big Ten right now than there are from the SEC, for instance. And so if most of the argument is look at the last 20 years, I think stuff's changed enough that argument isn't as strong as it once was.
Well, I guess so. I guess your point would be Oregon and Ohio State and Penn State have a better chance than Georgia and Texas.
And I think the way Oregon,
I would say this, I do think some of these programs, not just SEC powers, but in other conferences too, it's a little harder to keep the depth of talent, because guys who are number twos, but who are, high school studs, the kind of players that Alabama and Georgia, for example, have gotten for a long time, now they get paid to go someplace else. They're going to go someplace else. So I think where it hurts the traditional powers is the depth. Or it waters down the depth a little bit.
And you can only can control what you say, obviously.
I just want to go back to this narrative that ESPN, favors the SEC or wants the SEC. I don't give a crap about which conference a team's in. I want the most deserving teams to make it. I care about having a good game. But we have a deal with the Big 12. We have a deal with the ACC, and I respect all those people too, and they all deserve a fair shake. So. If other people at ESPN have an SEC bias, which I can't, as I said, I can't get inside anybody's head, then that's a conversation that's going to have to be had on a case-by-case basis. But just this broad narrative that somehow ESPN's pumping the SEC, I think it's a bunch of crap.
Okay. Do you understand the idea of when there is? I mean, all the networks have associations with the conference. That's how it works in college football.
But we have conference. We have a very long deal in a partnership with the ACC, for example. We have Big 12 games, and I don't care. And even when I was talking about Indiana in our game against Notre Dame, I made it a point to say, I wasn't saying they shouldn't have been one of the 12. In fact, I sent an email to a friend of mine who was on the committee saying, congratulations, when they picked the 12. I thought they got it exactly right. Based on what their resume was at the time, I thought they deserved to get in. All I said during the game was the way they played. It was 27-3 with a minute and a half to go. People were going to question whether they belong and how strong is the Big Ten really. And people did question those things.
Yeah.
But I never said they didn't belong or the Big Ten stinks. And I agree with you. I think it's not wise to cite the historical part of it as much anymore because of the transfer portal. These things change a lot.
And I will say, and you didn't do that game, but you bringing that up in the Indiana Notre Dame game, Indiana not competing as well. We all saw that. Right. It didn't come up as much in the Tennessee Ohio State game when Tennessee really didn't compete any better than Indiana did against Notre Dame. You're not doing that game. You can't control that.
No, I can't. And so I really don't. And I don't really have an answer to that, and I didn't watch and pay that close attention to everything that was said in terms of that sort of narrative. So, And I think the people who did do that game have spoken about it afterwards, so I'll leave it to them to talk about their own
I
comments.
will say, from out here, the only thing that to me, I think the two most powerful entities in college football are the SEC and ESPN. And with this new association, I would just say anybody who's not that, I think, is on alert a little bit, which I think is natural. But you're saying we're shooting it down the middle. What are you on alert for?
Yeah, I said I've never had a single conversation with anybody at ESPN that talked about we need to pump the SEC or say that they're better than other conferences, and I would be offended by that if anybody tried to have that conversation. I've been there for 100 years. It's never happened in any sport. So, people need to get over this team is winning the game because, and you hear it in the NCAA basketball tournament. Oh, CBS really wants Duke in the next round, so they got every call. It's a bunch of crap. It really is. I mean, that would be a scandal, right? It would be a scandal that would have been exposed. Who had the conversation? Who'd they have it with? How did it influence the outcome of the game? Have you ever heard that? This team came out after the game that the referees said, yeah, they were tilted toward Duke because CBS wanted them in the next round. Yeah. People need to lose the conspiracy theories. They really do. Enjoy the games, right? Enjoy the games.
He's Sean McDonough. Thanks for joining us on KOTN.
Thank you.
What do you think of that? What do you think of that, Bill?
Is he an ACC honk? Is that what we discovered?
He's like, I don't have any ACC bias, but I have ACC bias. I would have been. Yeah. No, so I was talking to him after off camera, just saying like he is one of those play-by-play guys who will inject his opinion into it, but I think he does it in a pretty good way, and it's because he's so experienced and he's been around so much, he's not afraid to do it. I appreciate that, especially like in a blowout game, to have an opinion. I think really it's what I brought up. The thing that happened is he, with his style of calling a game, brought it up about Indiana. Hey man, they didn't compete. Kind of like, what's up with this? And then the other broadcast, when Herbie and Fowler did Ohio State, Tennessee didn't compete any better, and they didn't really bring it up. But that's not in Sean McDonough's purview. Like, he can't control that. But I think that's what stuck in the craw a little bit for me, and I think for a lot of other people.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, it's just about like being fair, I guess. Like, they're the same situation. Yeah. Why not analyze them the same way? But yeah, Sean McDonough can't put his words in Kirk Herbstreit's mouth, unfortunately. So I don't know. It did feel like Sean McDonough was trying to reposition himself relative to what he said during the it seemed like a pretty strong like anti-Big Ten, anti-Indiana stance in the moment that I think he tried to soften when he talked to you about it.
Yeah, and it's one of those. I mean, it's like the fourth best Big Ten team didn't compete that well, but there's 3 banger Big Ten teams left, right? And so, the third best SEC team didn't compete that well. So, and he did it like that. He said, I do think he in some ways, and then he and I talked a little bit about BYU, like after the fact, and you and I have not talked about it on the show, but like the way BYU played against Colorado, I've seen other people, Shahan Jeharaja among them, saying like, hey man, like this is a little bit of proof that maybe BYU should have been talked about more in a real playoff consideration, with a win over SMU, with like, competitive losses and I like a pretty good resume that they were not part of the conversation at all. There was nobody banging the table for BYU the way people were for Alabama, except and of all people, like Sean McDonough might have done that a little bit more than anybody else, because he had said like, hey, what about the Big 12? But the thing that he said was, why do people think the SEC and the Big Ten are any better, especially the Big Ten? Which is, if he just would have left it like it's one of those, again, it's like we get caught up in this on the show. It's like, where does the Big Ten fit in? Is the Big Ten side by side with the SEC, or is the Big Ten leading the resistance against the SEC? And I think the context changes sort of where they get positioned from time to time. Yeah. So, let's do the cram-o-meter real quick, and then we'll get to the Penn State, Boise State breakdown. Here's the thing that I've learned in life, Bill. It is easier to cram things from afar, because once you get up close and it's time to cram stuff, you know what you realize? We're just people.
That's right.
We're just people. And I've told the story a million times that when I was a baseball writer, I was covering a horrible 100-loss baseball team. And I would just sit up in the press box and like write my game story before I went down to the clubhouse, like bang, 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 bang. These guys all suck. I can't believe this. They should all be traded and cut. And then you go downstairs and it's like, oh, they're humans. they're still millionaires, so they can still cram it, but they're human beings. And it like every time it's why being places matters. And it's why I think people want, and I hope we're past this, but the whole thing about sitting in your mom's basement that people used to say, like when you're so totally removed, and I think some people would argue that's better. Like you're so totally removed, you can really just be honest. But I think you can be too on the attack and you can still be honest, but actually realize there are human beings involved. So, you know what Georgia people are, Bill? They're just people. You know who's like a great guy? Jalen Walker. I talked to Jalen Walker for 5 minutes. What a dude. Like that guy's everything that's right about college football. He's awesome. And I will say this. When Kirby Smart, when it's not about shoving players and the cut that we played, I did ask about shoving a player. Mm-hmm. What's the lesson you learned from shoving a player? So at least he got asked about it once. But when it's not related to the off-field driving stuff, and when he's not shoving people, and I thought this when I covered it when Ohio State and you covered it when Ohio State and Georgia played 2 years ago, I thought he had like a great handle on his team. Like I think he has like a great, like I think like holistically leading a program in that way, other than those two things, which are two gigantic things. I really think he's got a really good vibe on his guys. And so when he's sitting up there for an hour talking about college ball, and it's not about that other stuff, like you're like, this guy's kind of got it. So which is then, I think people can fall under the spell, and it's like, well, he's not infallible. But anyway, I'm cramming it like 25. We're just people.
I was going to say, is this all leading to a cram of 0?
Just 25. Just like a little bit. I didn't wear my hat. I didn't bring a real sword. It's like we're just people, and then I'll go back to a guest bedroom in the Midwest and the North, and I'll be back to $500 million like it was last week. So let's run through the ratings. We do this every week. We forgot to do it in week 1 because I'm a bad host and I forgot to do it. But since then, week 2, 815, week 3, 975, week 4, 910. Then we broke it for the first time in week 5. It has got over 1,000 at 1,200, then 1,600, then $6.5 million in week 7, which was really when we smashed it for the very first time. Then almost 500,000, then down to 652. When again we reminded ourselves, Bill, we're just people. Week 10, 45,000. Week 11, $1 million. Week 12, 250,000. Week 13, 1.85 million. Week 14, Brett Beal in his face. Week 16, 26.65 million. And last week, $500 million or 500 million. So look at this come down. I don't even know, unless you do like 100 billion. If I'm at 25, I don't think we can top last week. Where are you?
I'm gonna take my cue from you, and because I'm not around it. I'm here covering a Northern banger between two supreme Northern teams. So we didn't talk about the SEC. No one cares about the SEC here.
Yeah.
So there were none of yeah, that was great.
It
was
great. That's good.
There were none of those vibes here. So I'll go low like you, and I'll say 21 because that's how many points Iowa currently has on Missouri.
What's the score of that game?
21-14 at the half, it looks like.
Okay. So, Mike, we'll be at 23 for the average next week. So, like, that's just again. But who knows what Kirby Smart's going to do during the game? He might punch a leprechaun in the neck, and then we'll be back at $500 million. Like, what are you going to do, right? I mean, like, we've got to react to the moment. But like right now, we're just people. All right. When we come back, finally, a Fiesta Bowl big game breakdown. Boise State, Penn State, next on KOTN. Back on Kings of the North. I hope people are ready, Landis, because we're going to be rolling it out on Tuesday. So our plan is to have. I fought you on this just because I want to maximize sitting in a ballroom in New Orleans, right? I mean, look at this. look at this vibe that I'm bringing people right now. You're in a hallway. I'm interrupting people who are working. Like, I need to give people more of this. So we're going to do 2 previews on Saturday. We're going to do the big game breakdown on Georgia, Notre Dame. We'll do that in the morning. I think we're going to go live around like 10:30, which will be 10:30 Eastern, which will enable us to react pretty immediately to the head coach news conferences for Marcus Freeman and Kirby Smart, any last things that get said. And then we'll take a break. We'll do about an hour, focus just on the Sugar Bowl. Then we'll do a break, and then we'll come back in the afternoon, probably like 2-ish Eastern. Does that seem like that works for you? And do an hour on the Rose Bowl. Ohio State, Oregon, react to what Ryan Day and Dan Lanning said in the morning and do our big game breakdown on that. And then we'll also just touch on Arizona State, Texas, because they're also playing, but they're not in the North. So we'll have those 2 on Tuesday. So we'll see it twice, and then we'll react Tuesday night after Boise State, Penn State. No shows on Wednesday during the day because you'll be watching games, and then we'll come back Wednesday night with an absolute banger. I'll be live at the Sugar Dome.
They should call it that.
They should call it that. At the Superdome after the Sugar Bowl, I'll be live there. Bill will be holding it down in your hotel room, I assume, or just probably
at this point,
some hallway, some random hallway, and you'll have all the the reaction from the Rose Bowl. So we'll have those 2 Northern games covered on Wednesday. So 2 preview shows Tuesday and a post game show Tuesday. Just a post game show Wednesday, and then back noon Eastern normal time on Thursday for another wrap before we fly home. Let's do this. New Year's Eve is the first quarterfinal. Tuesday at 7:30 Eastern on ESPN. Penn State's favored by about 11 over Boise State. Let's start with Boise State offense, Penn State defense. Does Boise State have any good offensive players?
They sure do. His name is Ashton Jeanty. You may have heard him, Heisman Trophy finalist. He is, let me just do some math here. He needs 132 yards to break Barry Sanders' single season FBS rushing record. Where do you stand on that, by the way? Barry Sanders did it in 11 games, and postseason games didn't count for him back then. Ashton Jeanty has played 13. He's going to try to break the record in his 14th game. That still counts, right? It's like a Roger Maris, Babe Ruth situation, but like it still counts, I think.
Yeah, but I also think they should go back and add all the bowl stuff in to the old records because they have it.
They do have it. Yeah.
It's not like they don't know what Barry Sanders did in the bowl. It's like, I understand you didn't count it then, but count it now.
He had another 200 yards in that bowl game. I think he also scored 5 touchdowns in that game too. So with the bowl game from that year, he'd have 2,850.
Why can't we count it? Like, why wouldn't we go back?
I think we should. Yeah,
do the math.
Yeah,
just math. Just people and math. That's all we are, Bill.
Right. That's just people and math. Yeah. So anyway, that there's some like asterisk history perhaps on the line here for Ashton Jeanty against Penn State. I think I feel like I've heard a decent amount of like, Ashton Jeanty is very good. Boise obviously can run the ball very well, but they're one-dimensional, so they're not going to be able to do anything against Penn State. I don't know that I agree with that. I
haven't heard that from me.
Like Penn State's run defense actually scares me a little bit. And it's not because it's been bad all year. It's had some games where it's not been great. USC ran for 189, averaged almost 8 yards a carry. Ohio State ran for 176, averaged 4.5 yards per carry. Oregon ran for 183, averaged about the same, 4.3 yards, I think that game was. There are times where I watch Penn State on defense defending the run where I feel like I see guys jumping out of gaps, like just playing really over aggressively. And maybe you're less likely to do that if you're in a game where you know that that's the number one thing you need to stop. But I actually think it's been like a characteristic of all of James Franklin's defenses is that they are a hyper aggressive defense. They really fly around. They have a ton of speed, and it almost always serves them well. But there are times where it comes back to bite them, and I'm wondering if it could in this matchup against a guy like Ashton Jeanty, who's not only the nation's leading rusher, but his production after contact would be the second leading rusher in the country, over 1,600 yards. He just forces broken tackles like a madman. And like we've talked about Penn State all year. And I think the one minor criticism we've had of them as a defense is that sometimes they don't tackle well. They're 87th in the country in tackle grade by Pro Football Focus. I was looking through some of the individual stuff. Among FBS defenders that have played 300 defensive snaps this year, missed tackle percentage, number 1 is Amin Vanover from Penn State, defensive lineman. Number 11 is Zion Tracy, Penn State's nickel. And number 32 is Dom DeLuca, Penn State's linebacker, who I think is going to play a decent amount in this game.
Yeah.
So there's just guys who have a penchant for whiffing sometimes when they're trying to tackle. And like if Penn State can clean that up, then I don't think Boise has a shot to win this game. But it's not like it's a thing that's happened once for Penn State and they kind of flushed it out and they got over. Like it does show up from time to time. So that's the thing. Like that's the pathway here, because I don't think you're super worried about Maddox Maxon like dropping back and ripping throws against Penn State's defense. And aside from Cam Camper, who is a former Indiana receiver who Tom Allen, Penn State's defensive coordinator, knows quite well. Like he's a good player, but I don't think he's a game breaker. Like it has to be Ashton Genty, quite obviously.
Yeah.
And if Penn State, can overcome what I've viewed to be a little bit of a bug in their defense sometimes, then I think they'll be totally fine. But if they don't, then I think Boise can make this competitive.
So it's funny. I'm going to talk a lot about missed tackles too, because that's also happens on the Boise State side of the ball. It's funny. And they both can run it. So like that, I do think it might come down to like who can tackle running backs in this game. But I think the SMU and Indiana performances showed us something about depth of talent that applies to Boise State. That SMU was a G5 roster the way it was built. Now all of a sudden they're in the Power 4, and Indiana with so many JMU guys and MAC guys. There's a lot of G5 guys there, and it doesn't mean they're not great players. Doesn't mean those aren't great teams, but like at the highest level, right? Because those teams can beat the ding dong talented teams all day. Right? Do your job. And I just wonder if Boise State's next in that it becomes a 3-team conversation of like this, when they play the very best teams that are talented and do their job, that beats teams who aren't quite as talented and do their job. And that like they got in because Mississippi, Ole Miss and Alabama and South Carolina and Miami and teams like that didn't do their jobs enough. So these teams, to their credit, got in. But then against teams like this, like Penn State does its job pretty well, I think, even though you just did 5 minutes on how they can't tackle anybody. I wonder about it. But then the other thing I wonder about is, did the SMU game trick us? Because SMU showed up, was like, what are these 100,000 people in white doing, screaming at me? And Kevin Jennings wouldn't stop throwing it to Penn State. And did that trick us that now we think Penn State's a juggernaut and Boise State can't hang, when actually SMU just got blitzed? Because I've mentioned that a couple times this year. Pitt goes down to SMU and gets blitzed. Kansas State goes to BYU and gets blitzed. Like it just gets away from you. It got away from SMU. So like where do you think you stand on that conversation? Which way would you lean more? Boise State, really depth of talent, it's just not going to be quite enough to compete, or we're overestimating Penn State because they had a perfect day and SMU fell apart?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of give credence to both, I guess. I guess you'd have to lean more in the direction of Boise doesn't quite have it as a G5 team to truly compete in this situation. But it's also like the crowd was a huge factor for against SMU. That's not going to be a thing here, right? This is a neutral site. There'll be Penn State fans.
You couldn't hear. You couldn't hear.
Yeah, and
you couldn't hear anything.
It was that way in South Bend too. There weren't a lot of Indiana fans in South Bend when Indiana was playing that game, and crowd noise was a problem for Indiana when it lost to Ohio State on the road too. So like that's not the only reason. I think it's talent first, but it's maybe that the environment second. So the environment almost gets washed away here. Boise's been on the field with Oregon. Like I think they know what it looks like. They know what it looks like, and they know what it feels like. And there's probably, I would imagine, a decent amount of confidence for Boise gained from going toe to toe with Oregon, even if it was earlier in the year. And then watching Penn State play a similar kind of game against Oregon, right? So Penn State's a more talented team. There's no doubt about that. Boise has the best player in the game. Like I think that's the other thing that wasn't true about Indiana. Didn't have the best player on the field against Notre Dame, and SMU didn't have the best player on the field against Penn State. Boise has the best player on the field in this game. So, and I don't think I'm saying anything out of school there. Penn State might have the next 13, but right. Boise has the best, and I think that has to matter a little bit. So like I don't know. That's the spread. The spread's 11. Is that right?
Yeah.
Like I don't think it's Boise's got everything you need to take a swing and really hang here, but I'm not writing off the Boise offense maybe as fast as some of the people tend to. I think there's a lot with the other side of the ball we're going to talk about in a second, but I think I think with Genty, with SMU plays fast and turns the ball over, and Boise plays slow and doesn't turn the ball over. There's a frenetic nature to SMU that clearly didn't serve SMU well at all when I played Penn State, that I don't think exists with Boise, just because of their style of going about their business. So I don't know that I'm worried about. Maddox Matson's thrown 3 picks this year. He has actually a decently high number of turnover worthy plays, but he only has 3 interceptions. Okay. And Genty's only fumbled twice, and Matson's only fumbled twice. I think Boise's lost 8 turnovers all season. So they protect the ball well, and they'll play methodically and they'll run the ball and they'll drain clock. So there's a path there. We'll do our picks. So, but I guess what I'm saying is don't be. At least I'm not being dismissive of the path for Boise, even though this is a Big Ten team and a good Big Ten team against a G5 team.
Last thing on this side of the ball, can they block Abdul Carter and protect up front when they do drop back?
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I think we mentioned this going into the Mountain West game, that this will be the second game since September that Boise will have had its intended starters along all 5 of its intended starters on the offensive line, and I think that's a big deal for them. And it's a good offensive line. Obviously, it's a very good run blocking offensive line, but they pass protect okay. But it's a different beast when you're going up against Abdul Carter and Dennis Sutton and Amin Vanover, who I mentioned. Smith Vilbert, I think, has played really well. Zane Durant in the middle of Penn State's defensive line. There's a depth and a quality of athlete there that Boise hasn't seen since it played Oregon, and I think you could argue whatever Oregon was throwing at them at that time, it doesn't compare to what Penn State's going to throw at them in this game. So that'll be a different thing for them to handle. And Abdul Carter, I think, is playing out of his mind. I was rewatching the Big Ten championship on my flight out here to LA, and they were talking during the game about how Abdul Carter was mad that he didn't win the Nagurski Award and he didn't win the Bednarik Award, and he was hell bent on showing people that he should have won at least one of the Defensive Player of the Year awards. And if he's operating with that mindset in this playoff, then I don't know if anybody can block him. So
yeah,
it could be a case of Billy Ashton Genty's really good. It's a shame he had nowhere to go because Abdul Carter was just smothering him every time he got the ball.
Yeah. Okay. Let's flip it. So Boise State guys were talking this week about how the Penn State offensive line is the biggest they faced, and they haven't really faced.
They're huge, man. Yeah, they're a big offensive line.
And it just feels I think it starts there. Jaden Virgin Morgan for Boise State was saying, he said they are a lot bigger guys than we are used to, especially the competition we've been playing. They're probably the best offensive line we'll have gone up against. I think, Boise's going to try to use its speed. Boise is 51 sacks, and I think they're second in the nation in sacks, and Penn State's only given up 14 or 15. They don't give up that many sacks, but I think there could be some road grade in here that I just think might start, and they'll never stop it. They've held up okay at times, but even for instance, Wayshawn Parker, who we talked about, as a transfer to Utah, who was the number 2 running back in the portal. That's a real dude for Washington State. When they played Boise State, he ran 11 times for 35 yards. And then John Mateer, who transferred to Oklahoma, the quarterback, ran 20 times for 28 yards in that game. And Mateer's a real threat. But that's the Washington State offensive line. They couldn't get anything going there. And so if you have 2 talented guys with the balls in their hands, they couldn't get it blocked. Mm-hmm. This is a weird little thing. They've given up an 80-yard touchdown run in each of the last 2 games. There are only 5 teams in the country that have given up at least 2 rushes of 80 yards the whole year. Boise State's one of them. And they gave up an 83-yarder to Anthony Hankerson against Oregon State at the end of the regular season. They gave an 86-yarder to Kylan James in the Mountain West Championship game against UNLV. I'm just a little bit on alert for that. Is Nick Singleton going to rip one on these guys? But And then the other part of this is that, again, now we're making an SMU comparison, is SMU statistically had a great run defense, and Penn State did what they needed to do in that game. Boise State statistically has a great run defense, but I don't know, man. I have real questions about whether they can hold up. It seems like you do too.
Yeah, I think Penn State's going to push them around.
Yeah,
that was the because I was going back and watching both sides of that Penn State Oregon game obviously half for the big game break. I will do tomorrow for Ohio State and Oregon, because there was some, I not a lot, but I heard enough of like, oh well, teams can run the ball in Oregon now all of a sudden. It's like, I don't think that's true. I just think Penn State's offensive line is big and was getting after it.
Yes,
I think they're going to do the same against Boise. This is like a relentless rushing attack, I think, from Penn State is what we're in store for in this game.
Aller's got to be better than he was against SMU. I think he knows that, but I don't know that we're yet at the stage where he has to be great. And so he can't miss throws that are there. I do think it's one of those like, hey, get these Southern teams up in the cold. It's still also hard for the Northern guys to do their thing in the cold. So I think that you didn't see the sharpest version of Drew Aller in the SMU win. Boise State, they'll get after it with up front a little bit. But again, Aller was talking about them. He was talking about how fast they are. Aller was saying they're fast at all three levels, which is true.
Yeah.
But they're just not big enough. And going back to the tackling conversation, Boise State by PFF grades, because you're fancy stats and I'm just regular stats, but the PFF grades of the 78 linebackers and safeties in the playoff by tackling grade, Boise State had none of the top 62 and 7 of the bottom 16. So anyway, everybody who flows to the ball for them doesn't have very good tackling numbers. And so I've been all over, probably too much so, Nick Singleton since Penn State got in the playoff. And I just think
I don't think too much. I think
he's appropriately.
Yeah, he's in good form.
Yeah. So Penn State, going into that game in the first round, SMU's run defense had allowed 2.74 yards per carry. They allowed 4.7 against Penn State, but the two backs, Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, went 25 for 160, 6.4 yard average. So I think that's what it comes down to. Tyler Warren will do his thing, but I just think, and it feels like that's what you think it's going to come down to. I think Penn State's going to be able to control the ball. I think Genty's going to do his thing. I think Penn State will do it even more consistently. Penn State will be able to get a couple stops. I'm not sure that Boise State's going to be able to stop Penn State very much at all.
I don't think so either. Boise gives up a fair amount of explosive plays. So there will be opportunities for Penn State to do that. I think Genty will do what he does. I think you could see him hit a couple of explosive ones too, but I think there will be points within the game where Penn State is able to get those stops from time to time. I don't know that Boise will stop Penn State consistently. And it doesn't even have to be a situation where Penn State's throwing it on them. Like, I guess if Boise ends up really loading up the box, then you start to bring in the questions like, okay, you need a sharper Drew Aller, you need someone at receiver maybe to step up on the outside and make some plays for Penn State. I just don't know that it's going to get to that point. I think both teams run it, and maybe even run it fairly well, but Penn State I think runs it substantially better than Boise.
I think Genty could go 31 carries for 193 yards and Boise doesn't get to 20.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
So, and so Penn State's got to win this. This is, they have a huge opportunity here. Everybody knows that the bracket fell their way. Again, the idea, Penn State's the 6, Notre Dame's the 7, and the difference in that is one team gets Boise State, one team gets Georgia. It's like, okay, so good luck. You get if you're going to win it all, you got to beat everybody. But I think it's pretty convincing for Penn State. I actually think Penn State is going to cover too. So I have Penn State 31-16 in this game, Landis.
I actually have Boise covering. I have Penn State 38-28.
Okay.
I think I think there'll be times within the course of the game where it's feeling a little bit like a shootout. But Penn State will pull away because like I said, I think that will be it'll be more of a relentless rushing attack from Penn State, and I think something that Penn State's defense by the maybe mid third quarter, fourth quarter of that game, like kind of gets a handle on Genty and Boise's offense.
Okay. I'm on alert for a blitzing too. I'm on alert for this to look not dissimilar to the Penn State SMU game and the Indiana Notre Dame game before Indiana scored the points in the fourth quarter once they were down 3 scores. So, which does not mean anything. It just, the only thing it means is that, no offense, but a G5 team shouldn't be the 3 seed in this bracket, in this playoff, the way things work. And I think everybody knows that. And I'm not saying given this structure that they don't deserve it. but this is it's kind of a weird one. So, and again, if we're going by rankings, I mean, Penn State's ranked higher than Boise State. Like they're the 3 seed because of the requirements of the current structure of the system. So, okay. We'll do the rest of our picks and breakdowns on Tuesday. We hope you guys join us then. If you just get subscribed and get notifications, hit the bell, you'll find us. You'll get a little bloop in your phone whenever we're going live. So we're going to go live 3 times on Tuesday. Once in the morning, once in the afternoon, and once late at night after Boise State, Penn State. But it's go time, Landis. This is what we're here for.
We're going to ring in the new year with everybody. Late after Penn State, Boise. Yeah. Celebrate. Bring your family around the computer. Celebrate with us.
I mean, we're going 5 hours on Wednesday night after we have 3 games to talk about, including the 2 games that we were at.
Yeah.
But we're not at Penn State, Boise State, so I don't think we'll go 5 hours for 1 game on Tuesday night.
No.
But we'll be there. We'll be hanging out.
Yeah. For me, it's fine because for me, it'll be like 7 o'clock local time, 7:30 local time.
Yeah,
I guess maybe more like 8:30. So I'll have plenty of time to ring in the new year after that.
I'm trying to figure out when I should go to the World War II museum that's here. That apparently is just awesome.
Great. Yeah.
And I've never gone. I think I haven't been in New Orleans since Ohio State, Alabama in 2014. So I haven't been here in 10 years. So I didn't make it that time.
I've only been there. I went in 2020 when Ohio State played Clemson, but it wasn't the same thing.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah. I didn't go during COVID.
Open, but yeah.
So, so I got to get out, get to the museum, and then I don't know if there's anything else to do in New Orleans on New Year's Eve. We'll see. Who knows?
I might find something. Yeah,
I'll find something. Maybe more museums. Maybe there's some late night museums, other really educational, informative museums. Thanks you guys for being here. Sorry to all the 4 people left that I talked over, but I never quite got to the shouting stage. But it's also good to get to know Library Doug too with my little lightsaber. Good luck in your hallway. Where are you? Are you like on a loading dock right now? Where are you right now?
No, I'm not. The media lounge is like right to my left here. So I'm going to go in there when we're done here and see if there's any lunch left.
Oh, okay. You're not going to go in there and start yelling that people were interrupting you when you were trying to do your job?
No, I've already made enough of a scene. It's fine.
Okay. No, but it's good. It's good promotion for KOTN because I bet you people thought, man, that guy sounds smart. Because they can't hear me. It's good. The people there can't hear me. They can only hear you. So it's the best part of the show.
Nobody really seemed bothered about me doing the podcast in there, but I guess, they had to have the sound on super loud so that people could watch the replay of the SEC championship game that was on TV.
Oh, see, now the cram-o-meter needs to go higher.
Mm-hmm.
We were giving them a break, and now there is a little bit of SEC out in LA. All right. As always, thanks to our producer, Mike Yorstowski, for piecing this thing together, making us look good and sound good. We will see you 3 times on Tuesday. Once around 10:30 Eastern in the morning, once around 2 p.m. in the afternoon, and then after Penn State, Boise State at night. For now, though, we appreciate you guys being here. Without you guys, we're just 2 ding-dongs interrupting people to talk about football. With you, we are the North. Oh, by the way, did anyone ask Will Howard about his the North Remembers post?
No. Yeah. I should have. Yeah, that's my bad.
You can ask it post-game. Make it the first, win or lose, make it the first question post-game.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah. Will, I know you threw 7 touchdown passes and played the greatest game in bowl history. Real quick, though, the North remembers. Or I know you just suffered the most devastating loss of your life. Real quick, though, the North remembers. Either fits.
Right.
So, all right. He's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises. And that was live from Los Angeles and New Orleans, Kings of the North.